Whip fishing. It's just a different style of fishing, another string to the bow, so to speak, for the matchman. This fish I've got here is quite a good one, really, not the sort of fish you'd expect to catch on the whip. It's a nice sized fish. Basically, whip fishing is pole fishing, but it's using a pole and using a line of the same length as the pole. And here today we're using a 3.5 metre whip and loose feeding maggots. But this is the first good fish. Oh, it's a good crucian carp. It's amazing even how this whip can handle this sort of fish. Look at it. Just a tiny float, same length line. I've got no elastic on here. All the work is being done by a very, very fine carbon tip. Yeah. It's the first fish, crucian carp, a lovely fish. It's not really the sort of fish we've set out for today. We've set out for actually the smaller fish, the speed fishing, because that's what whip fishing's all about. Catching fish at speed. Fishing with the same length of line so that you can be back in the water very quickly, no shipping out. Look at that, beautiful crucian carp. Was easily handled, probably 10 or 12 ounces that. So it's going back out in the water very quickly. See, the length of line is exactly the same as a pole. Can bait up and then just flick out. It's a wrist action, that's why it's called whip fishing. The actual action is from the wrist for the casting, and you're straight out to where you're fishing. I'm loose feeding maggots here, just loose feeding maggots behind the float. The water's towing back a little bit, so I'm just loose feeding maggots behind the float. The water's towing away to my right. There's plenty of bites to be had.
Turn the wrong way, Jay.
If you miss a bite, you can just flick it out, back out straight away. I'm loose feeding. This is something you've got to learn to do, is loose feed with your left hand. Another one on straight away. It's only a small fish, this, probably a perch. Yeah, a little perch. Well, a little perch, 2 or 3 ounces, but these are the sort of fish we're after. This is the bread and butter fish for this style of fishing. Look at that lovely little perch. Beautiful colourings too. Little orange tinge on the fins. Small fish, but when you're catching these at sort of, if you can catch these at 3 or 4 a minute, a 2 ounce fish, that's 6 ounces a minute when you're fishing a match, which is a lot. 6 ounces a minute multiplied by 60 minutes adds up to a lot of weight. It's important. It's all about speed. Nice simple technique. Keep the pole. The pole stays in the right hand if you're right-handed all the time. Doesn't move. All the casting action is in the wrist. Everything's done from the wrist. The hand doesn't move at all. Even when you're unhooking a fish, the hand still stays in the same position. You must learn to feed also with this left hand. Feeding with the left hand, and it's an underarm flick. Just pick a few maggots up in your fingers, and then it's just an underarm flick to get the maggots out. We're only fishing a 3.5 metre pole, which means, and 3.5 metres of line, so we're about 5 metres out from the bank. The water here is somewhere about 3 foot deep. There's even fish now topping where I'm loose feeding, topping on the surface. And then we're in again. Look, another little perch. You always tell perch to get this sort of little bouncy action. Another small fish. These are nice. 2 ounce perch. They're beautiful. So get my watch off. It's getting in my way here. Right, to keep that down to my side where I can see it. I'm always fussy about the maggots I put on the hook as well. I always like to pick out the biggest that I can see. The biggest and the ones with the most black feed in them. I think they're the softer maggots. I tend to look, if you see me looking round in the bait boxes, I'm looking for a nice juicy maggot. Not for me, but for the fish. I actually felt a fish tug then. I wasn't looking at the float and I actually felt a fish tug on the line. We'll do a little bit on the unhooking in a minute because that's important as well. Keeping the pole still in the hand. So the action is all from the wrist. From the wrist on the end of the pole. You actually hold the line as well and flick out. As you release this, just flick with the wrist and the float and everything will shoot straight out in line. And then feed. Don't forget the feed. It's always crucial. Yeah, now there's a few fish topping now, coming up to the surface. There'll be roach probably. I first learnt this style of fishing in Italy in 1983 because the Italians were brilliant at this. This is the style they used for catching bleak. They were so good they could catch bleak 9 or 10 fish a minute. Absolutely brilliant at it. But this is the style they used, using poles with a fixed length of line and whips and just casting in and catching these bleak at 8 or 9, 10 fish a minute. And this is where I actually learnt the setup and actually saw how good a technique it was. In fact, I came back to England with some of their ground baits and their poles and their floats, because they're specialised floats, and then went on to win about 4 matches on the River Lee, fishing just for bleak, just specialised fishing with this style of fishing. So it's won me a lot of money in the past. Very good technique on its day, but you have to be careful when there's a lot of big fish about. But for small fish, it's unbeatable. I took a big fish then on the drop. Oh, that was lovely. That's a nice, I reckon it's a big roach. It took it straight off the surface. Big roach or big rudd, I should think, this one. This is a nice fish. A rudd. I'm going to net this one because it's we've only got fine line on here. We're whip fishing, but look at that, a beautiful golden rudd. I don't see so many of these in here. That's a gorgeous fish, look at that. Look at the beautiful colours on it. Look at that beautiful reddish tinged fins, golden, bronzy golden on the top. You can tell it's a rudd, you can see the actual top lip is set back. Top lip is set back, that's the difference between a roach and a rudd. It's set back slightly. They're a surface feeding fish. That's why it took it. I think it took it about an inch from the top of the water. Look at that, the maggot's still inside its mouth, all chewed up. But beautiful coloured fish. That doesn't look like it's ever been caught before, that fish. It's hooked inside the mouth, but I'd still use a disgorger so just to watch it you don't damage the fish. There, look at that. Lovely little rudd. Yeah, this technique has earned me a lot of money. In fact, it helped me win the World Championships in Hungary. Where we were there was, in the edge, there was lots of small perch. In fact, the French fished for them for the whole match and they came second overall as a team. But these small perch, we used them to actually take up a little bit of time while the fish further out were actually getting used to our feed. So what we did was fish close in with poles. This was our actual technique, our actual style, our way that we decided to fish the match, was to fish for these small perch at about 2 or 3 metres out, shorter poles than this, and then at the same time we fed on the long pole line. But these small perch were so crucial to the actual total weight. The match only lasts for 3 hours, so they were so crucial to how the rest of the match went. And really, it was how well I did on the perch that actually won me the championships, because on the first, or how badly I did on the first day and how well I did on the second day, that's what happened. There were so many of these perch there that in practice, when we were practicing, they were very easy to catch, but always on match days it becomes more difficult. And on the first day of fishing, I I was very aggressive in fishing for them. I fished with heavy lines and heavy rigs to haul out these perch, which I thought there'd be loads of them there. In fact, as it was match day, it wasn't very good. It was hard. The second day, I changed my tactics and fished much lighter for them. And I was catching perch at a rate of about 2 or 3 a minute, and probably caught in the first hour something like 3 or 4 pounds. They're only very small perch, but that added to my main weight was the difference. That's what made the difference between me winning the World Championships and not winning it. Just the little whip was part of the actual match itself, and that was so important, so crucial to winning World Championships. So there's always a place. It's just a part of an overall technique that enables you to sort of help you get towards a match weight. Sometimes you can fish a whole match like this, just on a whip. There's still plenty of bites out there. Still plenty of bites out there at the moment. Lots of fish about. Just lost a good one. It just sort of shot straight off with it, right on the surface. And they're even topping. There's little fish topping now. Probably more fish right up in the water. We'll try shallowing up in a little while. I think that'll be our next move. At the moment I'm fishing just off bottom. That's usually the way to start, but the fish are coming up in the water now. I think we can shallow up as well. Come with them. Yeah, there it goes. Yeah, there's a little tiny perch on. Well, this is a better fish. Looks like I'm in trouble with this one. There's the one problem with just fishing direct off a flick tip. A big fish can break you. You've only got that tiny soft tip as the shock absorber. But look, everything's done from this wrist, all the power's from there. Pole's doing a lot of work though as well. It's got a fair bit of give in it. Oh, it's another one of those crucian carp. I'd shallowed up and it's taken it at half depth. Well, that's a lovely fish. Look at that. Just shows you what size fish you can land on this sort of tackle. In fact, when I get this fish in, it'll be a good chance for us just to run through the actual tackle that I'm using today, the actual pole. Yeah, look, perfect fish. Another crucian carp. Absolutely perfect condition. Look at it. Just lip hooked. Can you see the maggot there? Just hanging there. Not touch the maggot though. Look, it's still wriggling. It's still alive. Unlike that rudd which squashes your maggot. Look at that. Gorgeous fish. It's about probably 12, 14 ounce. But once again, look, like the rudd, it looks as if it's never been caught before. Little barbless hook so it comes out easily. There, that is a beautiful fish. Okay, let's run through the tackle that I've been using here so far today. I'm fishing with a 3.5 metre Browning profile whip, and all the work is done actually from the wrist at the end, my end, and at the other end a very, very fine flick tip. This really acts the same way as elastic, but it's not the same as a shock absorber, but it is a shock absorber, but it just hasn't got the same amount of give as elastic. It's sort of short-lived, it goes around so far and then it finishes. But that's the other working end, apart from your wrist. And the line is fixed direct onto this fine flick tip. Can you see how it's fixed there? Now all I've got on here are 2 sleeves. One is permanently fixed on the pole. The other one can be pulled off, and that's actually on the main line of the rig. To actually remove this line, the actual line is just stuck behind that first sleeve, there, like that. to actually fix it on, that's permanently fixed on. And to actually fix the main line on, all there is a loop on the end of the rig. If you thread your main line back through the loop and fix it so it catches behind that sleeve. Just catches behind the sleeve there. Just pull it tight, and then the other sleeve slides up over. That's a simple fixing, simple way of fixing. There you are, there it is, permanently fixed. There's your loop. Actually, you've got a double strength of line coming out there, which helps it, because there's a fair bit of wear on the end there. And I've got a main line, an 010 high power Browning main line, all the way down. And at the bottom end, the float is quite important. It needs to be a very lightweight float, because what you actually cast is the actual weight. You don't want to be casting the float. The float actually follows the weight. So you want to float with, and this particular one has got a cane stem. It's got a really lightweight pith body. So the float itself is very, very light. It's four number 11s. So it's an ultra light float. The fish don't feel any resistance when they take. We've still got this 010, which is a fairly strong line, but there's a few big fish here, so I've got to be a bit careful. And then all I've got is 4 number 10 shot on the line. Now I've strung these out today because the fish are well up in the water, and in fact I'm fishing shallower than the depth. So there they are, look, 4 of them. They're strung out, something like 3 or 4 inches apart. And then the hook length is an 08 hook length. That's high power again. It's something like over 2 pound breaking strain, so it's quite strong. And the hook itself then is a 22, number 370. It's a Browning hook with the barb just nipped off. In fact, it's good to work without a barb on this style of fishing, because it makes it much easier, much quicker when you're actually unhooking fish and catching a lot of fish. Best just to nip the barb off. It's better for the fish and it's quicker to operate. So that's the rig. It's a fairly strong rig. It can handle, I mean, 010 is something like 3 pound breaking strain, and as I said, the 08 is something like 2, and it can handle some big fish. But it needs to, because once that flick tip has gone round, then there's nothing else left except the breaking strain of your line. But having said that, we can't go too heavy, because we've only got a light float, and it's all a matter of balanced tackle. If the actual tackle is not balanced, if the line is too thick, then you won't be able to cast it. So you have to keep this balance right. This has been, really, it's been, since high technology lines have come in and high performance lines, it's much better. We can use much finer diameters for the same strength and still cast small floats with them. That's important. You couldn't put 5 pound Maxima on this and try and cast. It wouldn't go anywhere, and in windy conditions it would be blowing everywhere. Let's see if we can catch another fish. Now watch that wrist action. It's just a flick out, lines on the water, and then feed. Virtually every part of you is doing something. You're both working all the time, feeding with the wrist, and we're in straight away again. Another big fish. Nice fish, this one. This looks like a roach. Flick tip's doing all the work. This is a roach, a lovely roach too by the looks of it. There, look at that. I should really net this, but I'm feeling confident today. There's lots of fish here. That's a lovely big roach. It's a lovely big roach. Now, when you're speed fishing, try to unhook without letting go of the pole. And to do this, you've got 3 fingers around the pole. You've got 2 other fingers here that you can actually unhook the fish with without moving the pole. You can actually unhook, your fingers are still round the pole like that, okay? The fish can go in, and in fact that maggot still looks okay, so I can go straight out with that maggot again. So the fish can go in the water, and we're there, and it's just all speed, straight out again, and ready to feed. That's what it's all about. It's all about rhythm and speed, And if you keep this rhythm up, then your feeding is much, much better. You're actually feeding in the right sort of rate, the right sort of pace for bites. And we're in again straight away. There's lots of fish there now. This is a smaller roach. There it comes. Just watch that technique again with just coming in, get hold of the fish carefully, just hold it, and then 2 fingers are free there. Just 2 fingers are free, just to unhook, and away it goes. All speed fishing, you can catch at a fair rate, especially when fish are feeding like this. It's no problem to catch 2 or 3 fish a minute. And these fish are now coming up in the water very, very nicely. So it just makes it easy. A few maggots in again, and I can see fish topping all the time, so you know there's plenty of activity. And every now and again we're getting the odd big fish in with it. Odd nice crucian, rudd, so it's well worth it. You could build up a really big weight on this style of fishing today because it's so quick. In fact, the fish are now coming up so high that once the bait drops through, even though I'm fishing off the bottom, once the bait drops through, it's a job to get a bite. There's another big fish now. This one, no, it's not that big, but it's a perch. And perch always feel bigger than they are. They fight quite hard for their size. Look at that. It's a perch about 3 or 4 ounces, but really that did go. You can get a real feeling on this pole because there's nothing else. There's no elastic to cushion anything. You can really feel the weight of the fish. That one's just down it a little bit, so the unhooking technique is different now. I just push the pole between my legs and then use a disgorger just to go inside. Look at that, that's another beautiful fish. These fish today are perfectly conditioned. Funny thing about perch, they're like those crucian. They never ever damage the maggot. That maggot is perfect. I'm going to go straight back out with that maggot again. There's no need to change it. There, beautiful little, chunky little 3 or 4 ounce perch. Oh yes, a beautiful fish. That's strange, look. I went out with 1 maggot on the hook and I've come back with 2. That's incredible. That must have just taken a maggot from the top and also took my hook bait as well. There, that's a lovely fish. Look at that beautiful roach. Something like ½ a pound, I should think. Lovely fish, and it took it right off the surface. Right off the surface. Just shows you that as soon as these maggots are going in, I think these fish are straight for them. That's why this whip is so good. It's catching them on the drop. There's nothing to scare the fish. There's no pole over the head of the fish because, in fact, the line... Oops, it's gone. Flicked out of my hand. The line is actually beyond the end of the pole. So there's nothing to scare the fish. Plenty of rubbish. Make sure you get rid of this rubbish off your line. Well, that was unusual. Went out with 1 maggot on and come back with 2. That's incredible. Just snick that maggot through. Look at that. Beautiful. Look at it wriggling. That wants to make sure that the maggot always wriggles. I try to just put it through the finest bit of skin possible. And this is another thing with using barbless hooks. It tends not to damage the maggot as much. And look at that wriggling. It really is wriggling there. And that is what encourages fish to go for them as well. Let's get out there again. This fishing's too good. I can't wait to get out there. As soon as it goes out, there's always something having a go. Just pick them maggots up in your fingers. Just get them between your fingers. In just an underarm flick with the wrist. It's a sort of a special technique. Nice easy way of feeding. At this distance, which we're only fishing out 5 metres, so it's easy enough to throw at that distance. It's amazing how this water is flowing. We're in a lake today and it's flowing back like a river. Almost flowing back just like a slow-moving river. It's actually flowing. This makes fish feed better. There we're in again. Well, this is a perch, I think. 1 or 2 quality fish today. This is just a small perch, this one. See how quick the action... Oh, it's all action. That's the good thing about it. It's all action. Look what I said about that maggot with perch. They hardly damage the maggot. It's almost, it's just a bit stub, but because there's lots of fish, I'm going straight out with that same bait again, not even changing it. Not even bothering to change it. Then flick them maggots around your float. All the time the float is settling in exactly the same distance out. You've got exactly the same length of line. It's always setting at the same range. We're in a go. This change to caster, I've just changed to caster and fishing a little bit further out now. Just looking for one or two of these slightly better quality fish that you find in willow. It's a roach. Just look at the casters, blown up the hook. Blown up the line, I mean. Yeah, look at that. Small roach, slightly better than what we've been catching. It's sort of 2 or 3 ounces. A nice fish. And there, 3 or 4 ounce roach. Took the caster. Now, I'm loose feeding casters and you can actually see the roach swirling on the top of the water while you're loose feeding, and once you see fish doing this, then you know that you're going to catch them. You know they're in the area and you know that it'll be easy enough to catch them. Burying the caster in quite a big hook. I've got a 17 hook on here, 17 354 Browning hook. Buried, got the caster buried, and then the action is exactly the same. It's a flick with the wrist, holding the line, and then when you actually cast, the caster goes to the furthest extent. As you flick, the caster goes the furthest and then it drops down through the water slowly. We're looking for those fish on the drop. And when you have a bite on caster, it's always best to come back in. Unlike maggot, where the fish cannot touch the maggot or don't damage it, with caster they tend to pull it off the hook or half off the hook, and then it's not the same. And we're looking now just for these extra size fish, just slightly larger. I think perhaps we might have eliminated the perch. I've come up in the water and loose feeding casters quite heavily. We're on again straight away. This is another good fish. Just another one of those roach, like peas in a pod, those. Look at that. And look, every time they're blowing that caster up, with their enthusiasm into getting hold of the bait, the caster's blown straight up the line. And that's 3 fish I've had. They're almost identical, all lip hooked. Just the way to hook them. Lovely, beautiful little fish. Nice little, I like the sound, and Matt Chandler likes that little chunky sound as they drop in the net, a little clonk like that, and you can think, well, that's a half decent weight, that one. I'll be happy if I'm catching them all day. Just takes a little bit longer to bait up, but it's worth it. And then excite the fish into, you actually excite them into feeding, get them into your feeding area. I'm really putting in some casters now, trying to stimulate these fish in. There's another one on straight away. This is a better one. The caster seems to be working better for even more bites and more fish. This is a rudd. This is a rudd. I've seen the beautiful. Yeah, it's a lovely rudd. I'll take a chance and swing this one because I've got a nice big hook on. Look at the colours on that fish. Look at it. That is beautiful. Swung that one in because I've got a nice big hook on. I'm using an 08 hook length. It's fairly strong. It's similar to the maggot. It's about £2, and once again an 010 main line. And that's a lovely rudd. These fish are coming thick and fast. I mean, in a match you could probably catch 30 pound of these as easy as anything. They're coming that quick. But it's the feeding that really stimulates them. If you came down and just cast out and tried to catch fish without feeding, you wouldn't catch anything, or you might catch 1 or 2. But if you can get that feeding action, now I'm putting in lots of casters now, loads of them, just trying to get those fish not to be scared. They're so excited, getting loads of freebies. There's another one on straight away again, small roach. See how quick this whip is, how quick it works. Straight in. Just Just unhook. Don't take your hand off the pole. Fish in the net and away you are, ready to go away again. Very quick, very efficient. A pole is a really efficient tool. A long pole, short line is efficient, but this as well is efficient. When I cast, you just give that extra flick to make sure you get everything line out in a line. It's like a bang. Hold it with your hand, flick, get everything line out in line, and then your bait will drop through the water slowly. That's when a lot of the bites will come. There's fish swirling there now. Oh, that was a big fish and I lost it. It was on and off again as quick as anything. Really stimulating them into feeding now. Sometimes it's a problem when you've got a really strong wind behind you. If you don't come back in with a fish, because you've got such light tackle on, it's a job to get hold of it. So really it's nice if you've always got a fish on when you're coming back. Bury the caster. Try and keep going. Try not to stop. Try and keep everything smooth and efficient. Get them fish, keep them in the peg. The more you feed, the more fish you get in your peg, and the bigger ones come in eventually. And those fish are so much up in the water now, even though I'm fishing shallow, fishing quite shallow, once you drop through the fish, it's hard to get a bite. They really want to take it, they prefer to take it as it's falling through. There might be the odd big crucian waiting down there somewhere. There's another one on. Oh, is this it? Did I speak? I think I spoke just right then. Said there might be the odd... Oh no, this is an enormous roach. Look at that, lovely fish. But see how quick it came under control. Can't go anywhere. These sort of stamp of fish, they're no problem at all for whip fishing. It's when you start to try and get in 2, 3 pound tench and 3 pound carp that's a problem. That's a lovely sort of 8, 10 ounce roach. Big fish there. All of these are just lip hooked. They're really crafty little fish. Look at that. Nice big roach. Perfect condition. So this caster really is proving better than the maggot, because the fish, in fact, have gone up in size, and I'm not missing as many bites now. There's hitting more bites. They do like casters here at Willow Park. I know that. That is a prime bait is caster. And of course we've got the added advantage of we've been able to use a big hook but having it buried. So once they take it, we've got a good hook hold, and you don't tend to lose as many fish. When I actually cast out that time, I could actually see the fish. As the cast hit the top of the water, the fish had a go at it. Sort of went for it and then turned away and left it. Might well have damaged my bait. I'm really keeping these casters going in because there's a lot of fish there. Trying to get them really excited. Just a different way of fishing this. It's just pleasurable, really. Just pleasurable. As long as you're not getting broken off too many times by big fish, then it's a lovely way. I used to teach my young daughters to fish with this style, because when you're fishing like this, you tend not to get any tangles. There's no reels for children to sort of muck up. If you've got any youngsters and you want to teach them or start them fishing, this is a good way. Give them a little whip, give them a pole, and it's easy to cast. There's nothing for them to turn. It's a lovely way for a youngster to start fishing. Just bury the caster, nice big hook, buried caster. Them fish can tell when they see the hook out of the, sort of in the bait, sort of hooked out of the bait, they know. You tend not to catch big fish then. This is working out really well, this caster fishing. It's I'm amazed. I didn't really think that we'd catch this many on it, but it's very good. There's a lot of fish there. It's really good. What I wanted to do, going on from casters, what I wanted to do next was actually show what happens when you start to use ground bait with this sort of technique. So I thought we'd use ground bait and pinkies, similar sort of rigs, but ground bait and pinkies with maggot on the hook, and see what happens to the stamp of fish, whether they step up, whether there's more or less, or whether we catch bigger fish. I suspect that we'll tend to catch smaller fish on the ground bait, coming away from the caster. But perhaps we might catch more of them. Might catch more smaller fish as they come into the cloud. Loads of bites to be had. Looks like there's a few ducks enjoying my loose feed casters at the moment. Oi, get out of it. The float even went under right in the middle of those ducks. Psst. Oh, this rain they've forecast has really started to come down now. Had a good start to the day, but here it comes. And it looks like it's probably set in for 2 or 3 hours. Still, the fish won't mind. They'll still keep feeding. It's just uncomfortable, that's all. Well, it looks like they've all gone home. There's only me, and there's someone over there in orange sitting on the other bank. And he's got the wind right into his face. He must be a brave man. At least I've got it on my back. Don't forget, make sure to riddle the ground bait off. Get rid of these lumps. Particularly when you're surface feeding. Get that ground bait a nice even texture. And we'll see if the fish are going to come into that. I'm going to mix casters and pinkies into that. Still whip fishing. Still got that hoover in my peg. Look at it. Must be eating up all the bits of food that I'm dropping in, all the odd bits that are not going out to the fish. Been there for a long while now, just cleaning up everything. Well, they definitely seem to love anglers. They get a lot of food from them. I'm sure it helps them to survive through some winters, anglers' food. Anyway, I've moved on to my next sequence now, which is actual ground bait. What I'm doing is feeding surface ground bait, with a few casters and pinkies inside. But still fishing a similar rig to what I started with, a maggot rig. Still a light float, still a 4 number 12s float, still an ultralight float, but just the feeding is different. Watch this action of feeding. It's similar to actually the flicking out of the maggots, except this time you have to keep your hand upright, hold the ground bait together and throw. Sort of an underarm action because the ground bait's so soft. It's a nice underarm action and it leaves a big cloud in the water. Pull your float into the cloud. The fish are straight into it, one straight away, right in the middle of the cloud. Nice big roach on maggot. That was instantaneous, instant. With just 3 balls of ground bait and then it was there. Lovely big roach. They're not frightened of ground bait, are they? There's only one problem, the swan's in the way for landing it, because I've got to net this one. Look at that, lip hooked, coming in over the swan's tail. Excuse me, thank you. There. It was a quick fish. I didn't expect them to react that quick to the ground bait, but it was straight on it. Just hooked in the lip. Lovely roach. Must be about, it's covered in ground bait, my hands, but it's still a nice fish. 7 or 8 ounces, I should think. Sometimes you can catch fish quicker by using ground bait. Sometimes the fish will come into ground bait where loose feed is not as effective. So you can switch and change, but generally you'll be using this for smaller fish, smaller fish, where there's lots of little fish. Get them right into the cloud. Get them feeding in the cloud ground bait. I think really these swans might have put the fish off a little bit. They're very close, making a lot of noise. They bite instantly then. I'd be expecting to get bites on the drop with this because I've got a cloud of ground bait going through the water, nice big cloud, dropping through the water. Not too much bait in it, a few casters, a few pinkies. Trying to catch these fish on the drop. Could be that there's just big fish here, or not so many small fish. In which case ground bait is not always as effective. So you will. Don't leave your bait in the water for long. Keep moving it, keep going out because you're expecting to get bites on the drop. And to get bites on the drop, you have to keep casting and retrieving. Don't just leave your float there. If nothing happens, after a few seconds, come in, cast out again. Try and get these fish on the drop. Perhaps the fish don't like the rain. Go on. Trying to keep these swans away. Ooh, lost that one. Now the strike, something we haven't mentioned today. If you're right-handed, it's a sharp movement towards the left. Keep the pole down and actually draw the fish out of the swim. Just a sharp action to the left. Sort of like just a flick down. Get the fish out of the swim and feel the size of it. You don't know the size of it, so you don't want to be lifting the pole up. Just a sharp movement to the left. Just assess the size of the fish first before you actually decide to pull it out. Another little perch. It's strange now, they're all perch on this ground bait. Don't usually associate perch with ground bait, but if you're left-handed, then just do the opposite. Just strike to the right. No difference, but as long as, the most important thing is you strike sideways, you don't strike up. Strike sideways and keep the pole down. Keep the pole and the fish down, just until you assess the size of it. It's just strange how these, all fish that we're catching now, none of those big roach, are all perch about 2 or 3 ounces. As we've gone through the different sequence of baits, it's just altered all the time, the type of fish. In the same peg, and now they're perch. The little bite then, its float just dipped again, gone again, and I missed it. A real sharp movement to this. You have to strike quite hard. You've got to set the hook home. You've got a fairly fine tip, so the hook's got to go in. In other words, a strike without any effort wouldn't exert enough force to pull the hook into the fish. Got really a nice sharp strike. There, we're in again. Just a sharp sideways strike. This is a roach. I can tell a lot of the times what sort of fish I'm catching just by the feel of it on the pole. It's a roach, smallish roach again. Not too bad, 2 ounce. Lifted up and in. Same unhooking sequence. Keeping your hand on the pole and the other one free to get the fish back. This is speed fishing. If you're pleasure fishing, it doesn't matter quite so much. It's just a nice easy technique of unhooking. I'm still fishing with red maggot, big red maggot going down through a cloud. I'm still getting pestered by swans. Yeah, that movement, the actual striker movement, is very, very sharp. It's probably straight. I'm in again, straight in, a real hard strike, and in again. Another fish. Real sharp movement. Set that hook home. That's important. This is a nice one. I shouldn't really be swinging this fish. Look, it's just hanging on. Oh, it's gone. That's a shame. Now that just shows you I shouldn't have been doing that. I should have netted that fish. It was about 5 ounce. If it was in a match, I definitely would have netted it. Just caught one on the top, then took it straight away on the surface. Another smaller roach. I think I've had enough of these small roach. It's about time to go back onto caster. Let's finish up the day, loose feeding caster and perhaps trying to catch a few better fish. It's definitely attracting, ground bait, it's definitely attracting these smaller fish. Quite a few of them though. Little tiny roach that. Let's get that caster rig on. Right, let's slip this first caster on. Let's see if the size of the fish goes up. I've got a good idea it will. Similar sort of distance. I'm just going out a little bit beyond where I've put the ground bait and in loose feeding casters. With a bit of luck it might not attract so many swans. Straight away I had a bite. I missed it, but straight away there was a bite. So it shows the fish are still there. Like maggots, I like to pick out the best looking caster as well. Nice dumpy caster. Bury the hook in it. A few casters, loose feed out. Watch the float as the bait's dropping through. Watch the float all the time. That's the crucial time for a bite, really, when it's dropping through the water. It might take just 2 or 3 handfuls of bait to get them there. I think sometimes the fish hear the rattle of caster on the water. Another bite then, straight away. Until they get really confident, sometimes they're just a little bit hard at the hook. Probably a little bit wary with all that ground bait that's gone in. And now I've got to wean them back onto casters again. Oh, there's another bite again, straight away. Make sure, don't forget, make sure if you come back in and your caster's slipped from the hook, if it's halfway down the hook, change it, put a new one on. Completely cover the hook. It's important to bury it, particularly for big fish. Ah, there it is. There's the first one. That's a good one. Real sharp strike. Yeah, a little bit better quality roach. Not enormous, but definitely a bigger stamp. Just about liftable. Lovely clean fish. Perfect colours. It's about 3 ounces. Barbless hook, so it comes out nice and easy. Look at the lovely eyes, beautiful eyes. I've got an idea I'm going to get a bigger roach in a minute. Just steady fishing. As if I've not had enough with swans, I've got ducks in my peg now. Looking for that bite straight away as it settles. As it's dropping through. And if nothing happens, then don't worry, come in. The bait is still okay then, and recast again. Flick it out again. Complete the sequence of the bait dropping through the water. That's, you know, I had a little flick then, missed it. You really have to be sharp on these fish. They're so quick with caster. Can you imagine the fish diving backwards and forwards, taking these loose casters? And they seem to be very wary. They know when there's one with a line attached to it. And you've just got to try and fool them as it drops through the water. There's movement all the time now as you cast in. The float flickers, it moves, it dips, but it's not got hold of it properly yet. Here's one now, another big one. Oh, this is a proper fish. Oh dear, I could get broken today. This is a good fish. Look at that, the change to caster, see what that's produced. Look at this roach, probably one of the biggest of the day. That's a lovely fish. Beautiful roach. I'm definitely not going to lift this one, this is for the net. Lovely roach, must be 12 ounces that one. There, caster fooled it. See how the stamp from them little perch to we were catching small perch and small roach, and then look what happens when you put caster on the hook. Look at how the size of the fish goes up. That one's taken, it's been a real greedy one, it's taken it well down. With a barbless hook though, it comes out very easily. There, look at that. That's a nice roach, isn't it? Look at the size of that. Lovely fish. At least 10 ounces, 10 to 12 ounces. That's the difference between caster and ground bait. There's the actual size of fish. Another quality roach to finish the day on. Not a monster, but still a decent fish. Just shows you the difference between caster. Starting on loose feed maggot and catching those small fish, and then going to caster and catching bigger fish. Onto ground bait and small fish again, and now back onto caster and back onto quality fish. Lovely little roach, about 4 or 5 ounces. It's a beautiful fish. Well, I'm nearly out of caster, so I think let's have a look and see what we've caught. I should imagine we've caught quite a good few fish. Let's just have a look, tip them back and let them swim away. Let's have a look. Just be careful with them. Try to release them without lifting the net out. I think we'll just have a quick look to see what we've got, but there's about 14 or 15 pound of fish there. Lovely fish, a nice mixture, roach, crucian carp, all sizes with all different baits. Look at them, be careful with them, let them swim away. There they are. A good day's fishing, a good day's whip fishing. That really was enjoyable. And the swans around again. Good job they don't eat fish, there wouldn't be anything left.